I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to Mark and Annie McCune. Mark and Annie have planted churches in Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, and have led ministries in Colorado, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Salt Lake City. They recently retired from secular jobs in education and have gone to Eastern Europe to do missionary work with ReviveEE. Listen as they share about their career, retirement, and work in Eastern Europe. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. This has been such an exciting time, and Happy New Year to everybody. I know I've taken a couple weeks off here, and it's just been so awesome. On New Year's Eve, my son, James, my middle son, got engaged to a woman named Alex Lawlensack. And so we flew out to Boston, and he proposed to her in Rockport, Massachusetts, which is a town outside of Boston. And it was just fantastic. I mean, just so encouraging, something we've been praying for a long time. She's just an amazing young woman. And we got to stay with her family and appreciated their hospitality so much. But we're just still floating. I mean, we're just so excited for them. And we had all our kids out there with us, and my son-in-law, my daughter, and my older son, David. So we're happy. But I've been busy just getting the church going and getting it up and running. And so I've just taken a little pause on the podcast, but I'm back at it. And I just want to wish you all the best in 2025 here. And I hope you're having an amazing year so far, and really look forward to spending this time with you as we go forward into 2025. And I want to give you an update on what's happening in our lives. Pam and I planted the church here in Tucson, Arizona in 2012. This summer, it'll be 13 years since we moved here. We formed a team of 22 disciples, and supported by the Los Angeles and Phoenix churches, we quickly grew to 100 disciples in 2 years. Last year, we had about 11 baptisms. The church has been growing. But Pam and I have been praying and asking God for guidance on how we can continue to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. And we sense God's calling. We feel like it's time for us to serve the kingdom elsewhere. We've let the congregation know that we'll be moving by July of this year, 2025. I'll be forming a ministry search committee to find an evangelist and women's ministry leader to take over the leadership of the church here in Tucson. So if you or someone you know might be interested in serving here, please email me at rob@robskinner.com. Also, I'd like to ask you to pray for Pam and for me for discernment, guidance, to find the best place to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Really appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate your listening to the Rob Skinner Podcast. I recently got an email from somebody in Uganda, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people are listening in Uganda. I mean, just around the world. It still blows me away that people are listening from literally all over the world. And I get, emails from different places. I just go, wow, it's so encouraging. So if you feel like you're benefiting from the program, I'd like to ask you to support it with a gift, because your support enables me to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches, and inspire others to do the same through this podcast. All you need to do is just simply go to the show notes, and there's a link to support the program. Mark and Annie, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I originally had you intended for October. You guys have been all over Eastern Europe since that time. We had some mishaps and different things that have happened, but thank you for your patience, and I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to talking to you guys.
Oh, yes, us too.
How did you guys become Christians?
So I kind of grew up going to church, and had gotten involved in just some Bible studies and things like that when I was in high school. And my friends had told me, oh, when you go to college, you're going to lose your faith. So before I left for college, I prayed, God, help me not lose my faith. Help me find a Bible study, something like that. So I In 1984, entered the freshman class at Harvard University, and I was in my dorm. And within the first week I was there, a couple brothers came by my dorm room and knocked on the dorm room and said, "Hey, do you want to come to a Bible talk? Do you want to come to a Bible study?" And I'm like, "Of course I want to come to a Bible study." So I immediately started going to Bible talk and just fell in love with all of the people there. And even though I'd been involved in some Bible studies in high school and kind of thought I was a Christian, I really never had done any deep study in the Bible. And so started more seriously studying the Bible with the disciples there. Had to work through my pride. It took me a while. But in January of 1985, I was baptized and became a Christian. So that's my story.
Where are you originally from, Annie?
Colorado. I grew up in Aspen, Colorado.
Oh, Aspen, Colorado. Did you live next door to John Denver? Or
I wasn't too far from him. My parents moved there in the late 50s when literally there was one paved street and no street lights. So we grew up kind of from humble beginnings, but Aspen changed a lot through my childhood into my teenage years.
Yes.
How awesome.
Thanks to John Denver.
Thanks to John Denver, I think, yeah.
I know. Oh
He did come and perform at our school, our high school.
No
which was only
way.
300.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Rocky Mountain High. I mean, that's the 70s for me right there. Oh gosh.
Oh,
Seriously.
oh, absolutely.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
How awesome is that?
That's so cool.
So Mark, how'd you become a Christian?
I had this dream ever since I was a kid. I grew up in upstate New York, and ever since I was in elementary school, I wanted to live in Colorado. And I'd read about it in the encyclopedia that we had, the World Book Encyclopedia. So I told my mom and dad when I was in like fourth grade, I love you guys, but I'm moving to Colorado when I am done with high school. And that's what I did. I went to Colorado State, and fast forward about 10 years, I'm living in Boulder, Colorado, and I hadn't been attending church at all, but on a whim, I dropped into this one non-denominational church, and the minister was doing a message on discipleship. This is 1989, and he was looking for people that would volunteer to be discipled by him. And I was so intrigued by that. I didn't volunteer, but I went home and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And about a month and a half later, I was sitting at my dining room table, and I prayed to God, thinking of that invitation. And I said, God, I'm ready. Whatever you have in store for my life, I am ready to change my life and listen to you. And 3 days later, I got door knocked by a couple of guys from the Denver Church of Christ who were just out inviting people to a Bible talk discussion. And I went the next night. I went to church that Sunday, and I think 9 days later, I was baptized. I was so ready to change my life.
That's crazy. Okay, so was it the same church that you went to that those guys who knocked on your door came? Was it a different church?
It was a different church. Different church. Boulder Valley.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that is totally crazy. And again, that connection with Colorado. I mean,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, that's really interesting. But you got kind of a late start. You're not a college convert. You were 28 at the time.
28.
What
Yeah,
were you
that's
doing
right.
there? What were you doing during that 10-year period? What were you doing in that gap?
Let's see. I had gotten my degree. I was working as an engineer and just working on my career. Took some time off from school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But I was working as a mechanical engineer, but just totally living, I would say, a pretty uninspired life. I had achieved some goals, but just not very fulfilled, felt pretty empty, pretty alone. I wasn't married, didn't have a serious girlfriend. And there really was a big old hole in my life.
That's interesting. Well, then how did you guys meet?
Well, we were both going to the Denver Church of Christ, and at the time, Mark was living up north in a in a place near Boulder called Gun Barrel. And I was down it was about an hour north of Denver. And I was down in Colorado Springs in a house church, but for Sunday service, we attended with the Denver church, which was about an hour and a half north. So we were actually 2.5 hours apart, but we went to the same church and were part of the same singles ministry. So.
Okay, so I heard on the radio, this is in January, so middle of ski season. I heard on the radio, if you go out and raise $35 for multiple sclerosis, the MS 150 bike ride, if you raise $35, you get a free lift ticket, a free lunch, and a t-shirt to Copper Mountain on February 2nd. I said to myself, I'm raising $70 and I'm taking a sister. So I did. I went out and just raised that money. And one Sunday I was at church and I was trying to think, okay, what sister skis? Who could I take?
Who is not horrible, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because that'd be a little awkward if it was like first time skier. And so my friend Glenn goes, Annie grew up in Aspen, she skis. And I did know of Annie. And in the back of my mind, I had been waiting to maybe ask her on a date. And I said, perfect. And turned out to be the best first date ever.
How?
So it's like four of us couples, and we'd ride up the chairlift and you'd get a chance to talk. And then you have the whole ski down to think of other things to ask or say.
Exactly.
So
it's the perfect. Oh my gosh.
And if you can't think of anything else, a good, conversation starter to pick it back up is nice wipeout.
Yeah.
You doing okay?
Now, Annie, how did you get back? I mean, you'd gone to Harvard at this point. You'd come back home, I guess, or?
Yeah, I graduated in '88, and at the time, Preston and Sandy Shepard had been leading the Harvard campus ministry, and they were asked to move back to Denver to take over leadership of the Denver church. And so upon graduation, I was hoping for an opportunity to go in the ministry. So they asked me to join them to come back to Denver to work as an intern in the Denver Church of Christ. So at that point, I was a campus intern in the church in Denver. And that's how I got back in 1988. And then we met just maybe 6 months later, a year later.
Okay. On the slopes. How awesome is that? That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
How long before you guys got married? How long was your courtship?
Our first date was on the weekend of our birthdays. We're one day apart. So February, and then we got married that December.
It was pretty fast.
So from our first date to marriage was, what is that, about 11 months, 10 months?
Yep.
That sounds great to me. If you know the right person.
It's awesome.
Took us about a year. I go, that's if you know the right person, you're all set. Okay, so if you could just give us like an overview of where you've been since that time, since you got married. I know a little bit about your story, but if you could just kind of give us the 30,000-foot view from that time till now.
We got married, we were in the ministry in Denver, and we were there for about 3 years in the ministry together. And then we got the opportunity to plant a church in Boise, Idaho in 1993. And so that was fantastic. We were there for about just about 4 years. And after that, we moved to Salt Lake City and led a church there in Salt Lake.
Very briefly.
Briefly. And then, some different turns of events. And we were called to take a ministry position in LA. So we moved there.
To the Inland Empire.
Okay.
The Inland Empire, yes. And we were there for just about 3 years. And that was the late 90s. And then up into Washington. We moved to, I remember that because it was the eve of Y2K. And the world was waiting to see what would happen. And, they're all staring at their computers, wondering what will happen. And I thought, well, our computer is packed away in the Ryder truck because we're on the interstate from LA to Seattle,
We were not very prepared.
We were the most unplugged people on Y2K possible. Yeah, we moved up to Seattle, and we're in the ministry there in Seattle for about 2.5 years.
North Seattle.
So
Everett
from
area.
2000 to like 2002 or something, you're in Seattle?
Right.
Yeah, late summer 2002. And then we got the opportunity. We never thought we would have this chance again. We got the opportunity to plant another church. And we thought we wouldn't be candidates because now we had 3 kids. We had just adopted a little girl from China like a month prior. But we got the opportunity to move to Spokane and plant a church there. So that was summer of 2002.
And then we stayed there for 5 years. And then we moved back to Seattle to the Issaquah area, the east side, to serve in the ministry there. And at that point, we made the decision to step out of ministry and go into parallel careers. So Mark and I and our family moved back to Spokane.
This is 2010 now.
2010, yeah. And Mark became a school counselor. We both went back to school, got our masters. Mark became a school counselor, and I became a teacher, 2nd grade teacher. And we were in those careers for 10 years. And then we retired, summer of 2023.
And 7 days after we retired, we rolled out of Spokane and moved to Fort Collins, Colorado.
No.
Yes, back to Colorado.
What led you to go to Colorado? Why did you choose Fort Collins?
That's a good question. We made a short list of places that we were considering to move. And honestly, Fort Collins wasn't even on the list at first, but we wanted to move to a little bit smaller city that had a healthy church that also wasn't isolated, where the city itself wasn't isolated. And so why we eventually chose Fort Collins is because we know a ton of people in Denver from our early days. Even though we'd been gone from Colorado for 30 years, we still knew so many Christians in the church in Denver. So we thought we could live in Fort Collins, a small city, but not feel isolated in a smaller church, because jump in the car and go down to Denver and see hundreds of people. And so it really was it seemed like an ideal opportunity for us.
And we were really looking for somewhere where we could serve, where there was a campus where we could kind of host and be hospitable and help support building up a campus ministry, where we felt like we were needed and could lend our support to helping married ministry, really a church where we felt like we could grow and serve and God could use us. And that just seemed like a good fit for us.
Yeah. And in addition, Mike and Jody May lead the church in Fort Collins. We worked together in the ministry in the 90s in LA. And we just have a ton of respect for them, love their approach to ministry, their family building, their convictions have just seemed to get stronger over the years. And so we knew them, and we knew the church was really healthy.
I love those guys. When I took a motorcycle ride across country, they let me stay at their place overnight and got to interview them on the podcast.
I love it.
Nice.
They're just such a sweet couple. I had a little bit of connection with them because their son Ethan went and was on that church planting we organized in Flagstaff, and just got a great kid in Ethan. But what a great couple. I could see why you'd want to be in their church. And now Fort Collins is where you went to school? Like, that's where Colorado State is?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. What about Greeley? Okay, I get confused with that.
Greeley, that's where University of Northern Colorado is. And that's about 17, 18 miles east of there.
Okay.
Like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So you're retired, you're living the dream, you've dedicated your life to God, you've done all these amazing things. Then you decide to go on the mission. I go, what in the world prompted you? You guys are in Eastern Europe now. I go, what happened? You guys see a vision or something? You have a man of Macedonia talk to you?
You know,
Sort of.
in a way, we did see a vision, and he's called Kurt, our son. So he graduated in 2020.
Right during the pandemic.
Spring of 2020, University of Washington, right, you're talking ground zero of the worldwide pandemic, Seattle, Washington. And right during that time, he had decided he was graduating with an engineering degree, but he really wanted to do something and go out and serve God and go on an adventure with God.
Mhm.
And so when he graduated spring of 2020 and had already signed up for this program called Revive Eastern Europe. And is a program that at the time, Sean and Lena Wooten were developing. It had not been launched yet. And so there were 20, maybe 24 people on the team, mostly 20s, but then a few older shepherd couples. And the idea with Revive Eastern Europe, it goes like this. It's a 10-month program, and one city in Eastern Europe would be targeted, a city that has an existing church that just needs some spiritual revival. And the idea is this team would go in, spend 10 months, work with the existing church, go out, share their faith, help other people become Christians. And then at the end of that time, hopefully the church will be stronger, more vibrant, healthier, and then they would pick another city the next year. And so Kurt did that for Revive 1 and Revive 2. And we just saw how inspired he was, just growing and changing. And during those first 2 years, another woman that was on the Revive team, they fell in love and they got married. So he found his wife on Revive.
Yeah, that first year they were in Odessa, Ukraine. That was before the war started. So Kurt and Michaela and this whole team, they were pretty much like even kind of locked down, but they were still studying the Bible with people and out on the street sharing their faith in the cold weather and growing and praying together and serving God and serving the church. And a group of moms whose children, like me, whose children were on this first Revive, we're like, oh my gosh, our children are across the world. The pandemic is happening. They're in Odessa. So we started a Zoom group called the Praying Moms. And Sunday night, we would just get together and share news and pray for our kids. We're like, God, please just protect them and help them and use them. And Sean was great about keeping us informed.
I mean, you must, even at that time, tensions were developing between Russia and Ukraine. So you must have seen that storm front coming. That must have made you a little more nervous.
We were nervous, but what's so interesting is all of the people in Ukraine, and you'll even talk to Ukrainians now, who said, we heard that the war might start, but we didn't believe it. Because they've had these same kind of things being said for the last 20 years. So they really didn't believe it until it actually happened. And at the time it happened, the team was in Moldova. And so they actually heard the bombs.
Yeah.
That first beginning of the war.
Kurt was out praying with a couple of guys. Well, first of all, that week that the war started, Kurt and Michaela got engaged on a Monday. The war broke out on Thursday. So a couple of days later, and Chisinau, Moldova, the capital of Moldova, is only about 60 miles from the Ukrainian border. Kurt is out with a couple of guys out walking around a lake praying. He heard sonic booms of the first volley of missiles going into Ukraine. He said it was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, it was really Kurt in his courage and his faith and how God was using him and the Wootons and that whole team, Annie and I turned to each other and we just said, man, why not us?
Yeah.
We're going. It's just a matter of when.
And we did know, because of this Praying Moms group, we did know one of the couples that Catherine and Perry Hearn had gone. They were an older couple, like a Caleb couple like us.
Right.
So we knew and had some conversations with some people who'd done it. And we were just excited to be used by God in a different way.
Yeah.
At the risk of offending you guys, how old are you guys?
I'm 63. I'll be 64 in like a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm 58. I'll be 59 in a couple weeks.
Wow, that is a big step of faith. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you decided, hey, we're gonna do this, but Kurt's no longer there. You decide to go anyway. And
Right.
Yeah.
He came back. He and Michaela got married, and they kind of moved on with their lives. But we had always talked about, when we retire, we don't want to pull back. We want to grow. We want to serve. We want to, whether it's on our home church in Fort Collins or whether it's overseas or whatever. But this just seemed like such an amazing opportunity to learn and to serve and to grow. And so we're like, we're not going to get any younger. We might as well do it now, you know?
what a great attitude. What a great attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, just walk me through it. When did you get there? What were your first impressions?
Yeah, so we got to Chisinau, Moldova on the 31st of August. And this year's a little different because
And
there
what
are
year
actually-
was that?
I'm sorry, just this last year, 2024.
Okay, so you
So
just
about-
got there last August. Okay.
Yeah, August 31st. And the whole Revive team arrived that weekend. And that began 2 weeks of Revive training, getting ready to kick off the Revive program. So we were all together in Chisinau. This year is the first time there are actually 3 Revive teams. And there is a leading edge team here in Sofia, Bulgaria. There's also a team in Bucharest, and that was the sole team last year. So they moved on, you know, the team then moved on, it's different people, but the Revive moved on to Sofia, but there's still a smaller team in there helping to take care of all the young Christians and making new disciples along with them. And same thing with Moldova. So the whole team, all 3 teams, about 40 of us were together for 2 weeks. And then on September 16th was the goodbye to the team going to Bucharest and the team going to Sofia. And at that point, we stayed in Moldova for 3 months.
And that first 2 weeks, we all lived in this one kind of hotel, kind of conference center place. All of us stayed there, and we had training, you know, all day, and family dinners, and Ed and Deb Anton came, and Ed did some training for us. So it was just a really praying, sharing, playing games. Like, it was a really great time where we got to know everybody.
I saw some pictures. It was very, very interesting just to see that.
Yeah.
Very, very stark, I'd say.
Yes,
housing.
Moldova is very stark. It's very Soviet.
Yeah.
Yes.
It still has the feel of a in many ways of a Soviet state,
Yeah.
especially with the architecture and yeah.
What were some of the adjustments? I mean, it must have been tough. You coming from God's country there in Colorado, wide open spaces, you know, just beautiful, beautiful area. You're coming to one of the poorer countries in Eastern Europe. Like,
Yeah.
how did that affect you? Like, what were some of the thoughts that went through your head?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're right. Moldova is the 3rd poorest behind Ukraine, and second is Georgia. And it was a big adjustment. It's a collision of languages. I would say pretty much all of the older citizens of Chisinau speak Russian, and many of the younger people speak Romanian, and some speak English. But almost so much of what you do ministry wise is through interpreters. both Romanian and Russian.
Hmm.
And so that was difficult. Like if I was going to get up on a Sunday and preach, I am relying on the Russian translator, and you have to prepare set manuscripts a couple of days before you're going to speak. They need to review the transcripts to make sure that it'll translate into Russian correctly. And so just, so new for us. And just navigating, everything is by bus. The streets are very clogged, and we didn't have a car. So we would walk 2-3 hours a day just around the city, going to appointments. There are days, we look and wow, we walked 10 miles today, just around the city. So it was, just the language barrier was a little bit challenging for us. But I'll tell you what, we love the people, love the church. It's been around 25 years, I think it is, church there in Moldova.
The church there in Moldova is about 70 disciples.
Yeah.
You've lived overseas too. I've never lived overseas for longer than about 6 weeks. So I think Mark and I are convinced that it's going to help our brains, because you're just trying to go to the grocery store and be like, is this milk or is it some yogurt? Is it, what is it? The really great thing is technology has come a long way. So you can use your phone for Google Translate, and it even translates the ingredients you can do yours. It's so great,
There's that Google Lens.
Yes.
Last time, several years ago when we traveled to Lithuania, that feature wasn't on Google Translate, but you can just hold it up and scan everything.
It's very helpful.
You can even put the language. If you don't even know what language it is, you put it on there and it'll translate it.
When we moved to Japan, Pam went shopping and she got some corn oil, and so she put it in the pan and was frying it up, and all of a sudden it started to bubble and overflow. And then she talked to one of the friends in our church. And the person said, "That's not corn oil. That's dish soap that has some corn in it." So, we had so many crazy stories like that. There's just one of many. But
well, and we were trying to be hospitable. We had quite a few people from the congregation into our home. But we don't have. I'm trying to figure out how the oven works. It was great, and they were so great, and we built these really fun memories. Trying to even having conversations in Russian and explain how to play gin rummy and together, and it really bonds you. And I feel like those people just are in my heart, so much, but it is so awkward. It is.
So funny story we'd been there about 2 weeks, and we bought a bag of walnuts, but they weren't completely shelled. So I'm eating walnuts I break my front tooth. And I'm not just a little. I look like the old guy on the the kid on the Mad magazine and broke a big chunk of my front upper tooth right off. So I'm like, oh great, I've got to go find a Russian dentist, So I go, and there's this, elderly dentist, and she's trying to fix my tooth, and she's communicating and trying to figure out does this hurt and everything. And I'm in the dentist chair, and I know maybe 4 or 5, Russian words at that time. And she asked me a really critical question about pain, I think. And I meant to say no, that's fine. And I just looked at her and I went, "Привет." And that means hello. And I'm like, I've been sitting in the chair for an hour, and I just blurted out hello to her. And she just shook her head. She's like,
no,
you don't even
nice try. It is so humbling. That's awesome. Okay, so what prompted your move to go to Sofia, Bulgaria?
Great questions.
Yeah, so last spring, when we were getting the team together and preparing to launch, Sean asked us, he said, "Mark, are you and Annie okay? Everybody else on the team, they're going to go to a particular country and stay there for 10 months. Are you and Annie okay with going to different cities and kind of like Aquila and Priscilla spend a little time in this city and then go, over to that city. And your role would be a little bit different there. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, the more we can experience and
Whatever we
so
can do
did.
to help. Yeah.
That's why we're in a unique position out of this team of 40. So we were in Chisinau for 3 months. And then in November, we moved to Sofia, like November 22nd. And then unfortunately, the next day, we got word about a family emergency in America, and we had to fly back to Sedona, Arizona, for 10 days. There were some health issues with Annie's dad, pretty serious. So we had to go back to the US, but then we came back here like December 4th. And we'll be in Sofia until beginning of March, and then we'll go back to Moldova.
For 3 months, and then we'll have one more month at the very end where we're not sure we'll be, probably either Bucharest or Sofia.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now let me ask you this. How are you raising money for your trip? Is it just your retirement, or did you do additional fundraising? What's supporting you right now?
We were fortunate in that we were able to rent our house. We live right by a university, and through sabbaticalhomes.com, we were able to rent our house to a university professor, which was awesome. So that is actually helping to fund the majority of our trip. And the rest of our trip, we're paying through our savings and retirement and income and things like that. But we also did do fundraising. Everybody who goes on the team helps with fundraising. And so if your own funds are already covering your expenses, you raise funds for the Eastern European participants who are unable to fund themselves, because in Eastern Europe, like if for instance, in Russia and Ukraine, and we have participants from both Russia and Ukraine, they can't raise money at all.
Right.
So the money that other participants raise goes to help support them coming on.
How much is it costing you? Like what are your monthly expenses? Have you been able to kind of dial that in? What would it cost if a person's interested and they're going, how much would that cost for me to do that?
Yeah. Sean gave a goal for every Revive member to raise $14,000
for 10 months
for the full 10 months.
And I say that pretty much covers our expenses. The extra trip we took back to the States wouldn't have been covered by that. And also we personally have some extra expenses in the US because we own a home and things like that. But for somebody who just wants to know the expenses actually here in Eastern Europe, that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
$14K for 10 months.
That is so cheap. It's like $1,400 a month. That's dirt cheap for from an American perspective. I mean, for our listeners overseas, totally different. But I just go, wow, that's amazingly inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your money goes quite a bit further in Eastern Europe. And this is Sean and Elena's 5th year of running the Revive program. So they have it pretty dialed in what it costs each person.
And that also covers, we are having one trip to Greece, which we're so excited about, the first week of March, and we're going to Greece and having training there. I think either Valder Koha or Ed Anton are teaching us during that week, and it covers that trip too. So, I mean, there are a few extra expenses that even are included in that.
Okay. So that covers your flights to get out there and back. And then also like ministry travel.
Food, transportation.
Wow. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Have there been any inspirational stories? I know you guys haven't been there super long, just maybe 5 months or something, but anything that's inspired you? Have you seen anything where you go, that's God working right there? I see the footprints of God.
Yeah, even in the last few weeks here in Sofia, the church is pretty small. It's about 25, maybe.
The
actual church.
I think it like 15. Actually,
okay, it might even be a little smaller, maybe 15. And then the Revive team. But in the last couple of weeks, 3 people have become Christians.
Wow.
And it's really inspiring. They all became Christians different ways. This one teen, he just turned 18 this last Sunday. This church here is 25 years old.
Wow.
And he is the first Kingdom kid ever baptized.
Hey, man, that's awesome. That's
It's
great.
so cool.
Wow,
His faith just grew, seeing these young people living out their faith. He just really saw, I can do this.
yeah.
Yeah, he lost his father a couple years ago in the pandemic, and his father was leading the church, and he just kind of had to grow up,
Yeah.
and so he became a disciple.
His dad was leading the church in Sophia.
Had been prior to that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. What
Yeah.
a loss.
Yeah, and then this other single woman, Olya, she found us on Instagram. So there you go, purely through social media, and she got baptized right before Christmas. And then this last Sunday, a single guy named Alex was baptized. He was met by 2 disciples in a bookstore. He was just perusing books, and a couple of guys just came up and struck up a conversation, asked him, what his thoughts were on God and faith in the Bible. And he started coming out to church. And so, yeah, I mean, that's all within a really short period, 3 people becoming Christians. So that's been super inspiring.
I think really inspiring too is just, there's most of the young people on Revive are between about 22 and 30. And it's just so inspiring to see their passion to share their faith. Like they just want to go out, share with everybody, go on the street, invite people, have great conversations, deep conversations. They're just so energized by that. Honestly, we are learning from them.
Yeah.
We've shared our faith for years and years, decades and decades and decades, but just to see their faith and their love for God and their desire to share. I mean, the way you share your faith on the street here is you go, do you speak English? And then if somebody says yes, then you start talking to them about God, because none of us speak Bulgarian.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah.
And
Or Russian
or
Yeah,
Romanian.
yes.
So it's just so inspiring to see their love for God and to see this. You hear a lot of things about this younger generation. I'm like, they're amazing, and it's just so encouraging to see their faith.
Yes. I got to share about one other guy, a team member named Alberto. So he was on Revive last year. So Revive number 4, they call it 4.0. He was on 4.0. He is a doctor from Panama City, right? So he's completed med school. He's a doctor. He decided to put his career on hold to go on Revive. So he speaks a kind of a dialect of Spanish
From Panama.
from Panama. He gets to Bucharest, Romania, and in that 10-month time, he learned English. He had never, so that he could communicate with the rest of the Revive team. And a lot of people in Bucharest, it's very international, so a lot of people speak English. So, okay, think about learning English in 10 months. I mean, conversing.
Yeah,
oh my
he's
gosh.
great.
This year, he is on Revive 5.0 in Chisinau. He is learning Romanian. And in the first 4 months, after 4 months, he could go out on the streets and share his faith in Romanian.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
He needs
It's
to write.
incredible.
He
He
needs
wants-
to write a book immediately.
Yes.
He definitely needs to write a book.
He's trying to get into a residency program in Spain to be a neurologist.
Yeah.
And
Very inspiring and he's just such a humble, amazing disciple.
yeah,
Wow, what's his
that's
name?
a really inspiring. Alberto.
Alberto. That's really cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about evangelism. So, what's different about evangelism there? Okay, you got disciples all over the world. What's different about the ReviveEE evangelism that's making it work, that's bringing baptisms in small churches? Because we've got people in small churches, lots of churches with 15 members. haven't seen a baptism in months, if not years, and even decades in some rare situations. What's happening? How are you reaching out to people, and what's working?
Yeah, great question. The first thing that Sean and Lena really impress on the Revive team is we are not event driven. We are not going out and just inviting people to church. For Eastern Europeans, that's maybe not even necessarily a positive connotation. You know, you've got the Orthodox Church, which, people don't really, hear, maybe don't want to be a part of. So when they hear church, they may be immediately turned off. So Sean Elena said, you're not going out inviting people to church or church events. What we want you to do is go out and look for opportunities to share your testimony, right? And so, we might go out and, stop. If Annie and I are sharing, we might ask somebody, hey, we are just out right now talking to people about your age, younger, 20s. And we're talking to people, we wonder what faith in God looks like. What does it look like to you? And just get in that conversation. And hopefully it can come around to, are you interested in learning more about having faith in God in the Bible, right? And let's say if that person says yes, if they have time, hey, how about right now? We could look at a scripture, we could go to a coffee shop, and I could just share with you my story, and I would love to hear maybe your story, any experience that you've had with God, or anything that has formed your opinions or, your views of God. So that's what it is. You really wanting to get it in a good conversation and share your testimony with them.
A lot of people here are not very churched. Like in Chisinau, probably more people are sort of atheist or agnostic. Here, more people would maybe say they're Christian because actually in Bulgaria, the Orthodox Church is written into their constitution.
Now,
So they maybe had.
Is that the Greek Orthodox Church, Eastern Orthodox? Which Orthodox Church are we talking about?
Eastern Orthodox.
Okay.
Yeah, Eastern Orthodox. So could be Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, but it's some, I think, I don't even know if it's a Bulgarian Orthodox.
Got it.
That's a good question. I mean, Bulgaria borders Greece, so I'm sure there is some Greek Orthodox influence.
I would say too, they just share their faith a lot. I mean, all the people who are here in Revive just share their faith a lot with a lot of people, and they don't give up. But they go out and they share their faith and they pray and they encourage each other, and then they go out and share their faith more, and then they encourage each other. And there's a lot of family building, and there's a lot of fun things that they do. And they also have all of the teams have a really strong social media presence. And making sure that on the social media, it's not just an invitation to church, but it's pictures of them doing karaoke night, and pictures of them doing Bible study, and pictures of them having fun and building family. And so when somebody comes into that, they're immediately pulled into the relationships that have been built that are warm and, hey, hugging each other and making memories together and that kind of thing.
So are you guys posting every day on Instagram, you and Mark?
I am not.
No. Some of us
people that are way more passionate about it than I am.
Not every day, but occasionally.
There was a long pause right there. Okay.
Yes. Though I would say the most of the young missionaries definitely are.
Okay.
And in fact, one of the things that they found here is you can exchange. Okay, so every country has different phone numbers, like different phone services, all those kinds of things. So nobody shares their phone number with anyone because it's so complicated, because we have so many countries. So people pretty much share their Facebook or their Instagram. That's how they even communicate with each other. So it's very driven by social media, even staying in touch with people. And sometimes people don't feel as threatened. Like, hey, can I get your Instagram? Everybody's like, sure, here's my Instagram, you can follow me, and then you can communicate with them.
So for a person who's maybe more introverted, a little shyer, the thought of just doing mass evangelism is a little scary. So is Sean saying, hey, you got to talk to 250 people a day? Is he like saying, holding you accountable? For those who are triggered by the word evangelism, explain what happens. Like, how does it work?
That's a good question. No, Sean will emphasize more mission time. Okay. So Monday's always a day off. It's a Sabbath day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he'll say, 4 hours of mission work. That could include follow-up with people. That can include Bible studies. It can include some time of going out and sharing your faith. So it's really looking at it like, how many hours are you engaged in doing evangelism work?
And these are people this is their job for this year. This is their job, is to
Right.
be an intern for the
Right.
church. But for people who are in the church, Sean would emphasize, hey, 5 people. Write down a list of 5 people, share those 5 people with your small group, pray for those people, and see if you can do something with one of them this week, and have a spiritual conversation with them.
Yeah.
So he isn't like, it's very reasonable. Like, we just all need to be about mission, but it is going to look different.
Yeah. Because the church members didn't sign up to go on Revive.
Right.
But a church will not be revived if the Revive team is doing all the work and then they leave the next year.
That's right.
That's not going to work.
Right.
So Sean really expects the church to engage with Revive, and evangelism will look different for them, but it needs to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. For those who are older, it's how are you feeling about going out and sharing? I mean, I know that you've spent your life doing ministry, but still, you're not 23, you're not 21, you don't look like a backpacker going through Europe, So how have you been able to overcome hesitance or reluctance to share your faith? And I mean, to me, sharing your testimony with somebody, that's kind of a tall order, just kind of in one conversation, really just sharing your testimony. You're kind of drilling down real fast. What have you done?
Yeah.
What's helped you to kind of tune up and get strong in this area?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, we signed up for this, and most yes, we asked for this and we got this. It's so true. There's a guy, Tom Masters. He's been on 3 Revives, just went back home at Christmas. He's an audio engineer now. But anyway, he said, Revive isn't an experience. It's boot camp for the rest of your life. And I don't know about anybody else my age. I plan on living a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
It's never too late to go to boot camp.
Yeah.
I really feel that way.
Yeah.
So, what's helped us? First of all, we're like, hey, anything that's going to help us to be more effective. The world is changing, and any way that we can connect with people in a better way than just, here's an invitation.
Right.
See you later. Do with it what you will.
Right.
You know what I mean? But really try. We want to learn that.
I would say one thing well, 2 things that help were, when we first had that first 2 weeks of training, Sean and Lena had us practice just talking about how we became Christians. Like, this is how I was living, this is what I was looking for, and this is how God really changed my life. Like, we actually practiced doing that with each other so that it became more something we were very comfortable. And you'll notice, I mean, we've heard Sean preach so many times, but he talks about how he became a Christian a lot.
Right.
I think because he's done it so many times, and it's always kind of inspiring to hear people's stories. So that helped, just actually literally practicing. And the other thing is just going with other people. Like almost always people go together, like almost
Right.
always 2 or 3 people. And that way, if I'm not feeling that comfortable, my friend can, we just went out sharing with a couple that's here. They're from Poland. They're great, Henrik and Natalia. And they're so fun to share with. They're about our little bit younger, but they're older. And so just hearing them share how they share, then you're like, oh, that's a great idea. I could say that. And it just helps you feel less uncomfortable because you hear how other people share.
Right.
And I think I feel like one of the things that I really believe is that I can get better at sharing my faith.
Right. Sure.
I know I've shared it a lot of times, but I feel like I always could get better at talking about God. And even Sean was talking in his lesson about that.
Well,
Yeah.
let me just expand it a little bit. Do you feel like it, aside from the evangelistic aspect of your faith, do you feel like it's helped you to grow in your relationship with Christ to be there and do this?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
how, just specifically?
Yeah. Dependence on God. I mean, one of we had two goals really in wanting in retirement, and especially with wanting to go on Revive. We wanted to really reignite our evangelism. You know what I mean? In recent years, we're just like, we know we can be doing more. We need to be doing more.
Sure.
And that was one of the things that brought us on Revive,
Right.
to really kind of jumpstart that and change our lives, be more evangelistic. The second thing is, we wanted to make sure as we got older that we weren't getting complacent and comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has really helped us in our relationship with God. It is going on Revive is not comfortable. It's
Right.
not comfortable for a 20-something. It's
Right.
really not comfortable for a 60-something. And so my new, there's a brand out of Venice Beach, California called Seek Discomfort. You can get merch. I love it. I see there's a guy on a team that's got a, Seek Discomfort water bottle, and but that phrase kind of nails it for us.
I love it.
We came up wanting to seek discomfort because that's where you grow.
That's right. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
And it drives you closer to God. We've had, yeah.
Okay. So for those, when I hear you guys talking, it's inspiring. It's so encouraging and it's very attractive. How, for a person who's like, let's say, living in a first world country, they're locked in, they've got a house payment. How did you break all that down? Just decide, okay, we're going, and really get the courage up, the gumption to go, okay, we're putting our life on hold. I understand you're retired, but like, just make the decision. It's a huge one to get out of your routine and decide, okay, for a year, we're leaving the country. It's not 2 weeks. It's like everything. How'd you do it? How'd you decide it? How'd you go, okay, we're actually doing it. We're not just going to keep talking about it. We're going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because we had wanted, when Kurt first went, we thought, oh, we would love to do that. We thought it would be longer before we were able to, but we kept, when we retired, I mean, we were like, well, we have nothing that will hinder us from doing it. We really can do it now. And it really is kind of just biting the bullet. I mean, I really believe that most people could, if they were in somewhat good health and, have a passion. I really think most people could probably financially do it and emotionally do it. Once you get here, the great thing about Revive that I'm so grateful for is there really is it's a family. There is so much emotional, spiritual support. You're not alone. You're really not. So, and that's the beauty of Revive, is even though we're here and we're in a country that people speak Bulgarian and all the labels are in Cyrillic and I don't know what anything is, when I go to church, there's plenty of people that speak English because it is a team of people who, many of whom speak, most all of whom speak English.
Right.
So I don't feel alone. So it really is going, we really can do this. We just have to figure out the how.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to add.
Yeah. And pretty much as soon as you say you're going, you start within months, you start the fundraising. And again, Annie and I are self-supporting on this, but we still wanted to raise at least $14,000 to be able to help somebody else. And so we start contacting friends that we've known from years all over the country and telling them, what we're planning to do. And it was so encouraging for us, just their words to us, like, oh, I would love to do that someday. And oh, I'm so inspired that you're raising money for this. And that's just kind of wind in your sails.
Wait, okay, so you guys raise money for yourself and for another person?
No, we didn't raise anything for ourselves, but we told Sean, we're set, but we want to take part. If you're asking all the team members to sacrifice by raising money, we feel the responsibility to do our part in that. So between the two of us, we raised 17,000, something like that, just to throw into the pot, maybe in case someone else was short in their fundraising.
Which all of the Eastern European participants needed help.
That's so awesome. That's great. It's really inspiring. You guys remind me of Psalm 84 when it says, "Blessed is the man whose strength is in you, whose heart in whose heart are the ways of them, who passing through the valley of Baca make it a well, the rain also filling the pools. They go from strength to strength, every one of them in Zion appearing before God." And you guys are truly going from strength to strength. Zooming out, like when you think about your life in God, I mean, you've got an amazing background in service to God. When you look back, what are you most proud of?
I think first of all, we're most proud of our kids. We've got 3 just incredible kids whom we love very much, who we know really love us. We just had a little family reunion in California, and the entire family was together, and just really proud of the men and the women that they have become. So that's probably our biggest pride and joy.
Yeah.
I'd also say that I guess I'm proud, I'm thankful that we have persevered.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of challenges, in our lives.
As everybody does.
Like like everybody does. But taking care of our parents, we've lost 3 of our 4 parents. We took my dad in when he was in late stages of Alzheimer's because my mom died very suddenly. She was his primary caregiver, and then she died. We all thought that she would outlive him, and just taking care of parents, and for my mom and dad being there both at the moment they died, So just, I don't know, just grateful, I guess, to have been a part of that and persevere through that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to persevere and grow in our marriage and our family through challenges, through moves, through getting out of the ministry, starting new careers, kind of learning to love new careers, still staying faithful to God, we've been around a long time. You have too, and you've seen people lose their faith. And
Right.
I'm kind of just proud that we're faithful.
I know.
And we're still
I know.
given to God,
I know. It's really true. You just, when you're younger, you just kind of assume it, but as you get older, it's nice to still be walking toward God. It's just kind of just plugging away. And there's a lot of days it's like, it's challenging. And so it's really inspiring. It's funny because Val Koha mentioned something in an episode. I interviewed him a few times ago, and it's impressive. You don't think about the word perseverance very much. It's kind of not a very inspiring word, but on a personal level, it really makes all the difference. And so that's great. Very, very inspiring. What advice would you give to a man or a woman who wants to make this life count?
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is do it with God,
Yeah.
and that's the most basic. So most people who are probably listening to this probably have made that decision. But I can't imagine having a meaningful life without having God in it. And so being right with God and holding on to God no matter what happens, not letting circumstances or people or disappointment or discouragement or failure or anything else take away your relationship with God, with Christ, with his kingdom, and with his people. So that'd be the first thing I'd say.
I remember
More specifically.
I remember years ago listening to a message from John McGurk in Paris. And he said, we all have a purpose and we have a mission. And your purpose is not your mission is not your purpose. They're intertwined, but they're separate. Your purpose is to love God and prepare to be with him for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Your mission is to bring as many people along with you as you can.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I heard that 20 something years ago, but it just still resonates with me today, So Annie's talking about, number one, your relationship with God, which is the most important thing. But right along with it, at the end of the day, living on this earth, there's really nothing more important than also helping other people know God.
Right.
So I would say, like, taking up a hobby. Like several years ago, I wanted to learn how to play guitar. I know you did. You've done the same thing. I used to play some in junior high, a little bit in high school, and then life, right? This life gets in the way, and I took about a 45-plus-year-old break from playing the guitar. But I wanted to get back into it. But I thought, what can I do with this where it could actually maybe attract people to God? So I just started practicing, and I started learning spiritual songs. And I'm just going to join the worship team.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the leader. I just want to be the guy behind the leader playing guitar because I love it.
Right.
So all the songs I know are spiritual songs,
Right.
but it's a fun hobby,
Yeah.
but it's also pulling other people in.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, I do the same thing. Like if I want to learn how to fly fish, then I want to be able to go with others and reach out to them or, whatever. But trying to hold that lens of thinking about others and the fact that they need God, and there's times I haven't done very good at that, but we're here because we want to
do better.
We want to do better.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your faithfulness. And I'm inspired by your desire to keep growing in retirement and over your entire life, because it's not easy. There are many who fall by the wayside, and it's unfortunate, but I commend you guys, and I'm inspired by it, and I want to imitate that same spirit of making this life count at any age, because it's a long life. I don't want to coast into heaven. I want to be going in strong. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yes,
We've thoroughly enjoyed it.
We're honored. Yes. We love you guys. We love you and Pam and your family.
Love you both.
Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, let your friends know about the podcast. Just share it with people. Let people know, hey, I really like this podcast. It's really easy to find old episodes. Just type in Rob Skinner podcast and then the person you're looking for on Google, and it'll pop right up. I mean, super easy to index past episodes. So if you're going, hey, what about that episode with Mike May? Just type in Rob Skinner podcast, Mike May, and boom, it'll pop up, or whatever you're looking for. Secondly, read and review one of my books, either How to Plant and Grow a Church or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find those on Amazon.com. And finally, like I said before, support the program with a gift today. The link is in the show notes, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count Live a no-regrets life and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.